Welcome to the Catholic Midlife podcast, where we're addressing the challenges and the opportunities of midlife from a uniquely Catholic perspective. Join us each week as we spark a midlife renewal and create a firm foundation for the next wonderful, exciting, awesome season of life.
Hello and welcome to the Catholic Midlife Podcast. It's great to be here with you. I'm Curtis. I'm here with my fellow host, Karen.
Hello, everyone. This is our Holy Week episode, and we just hope and pray you're having a blessed week.
That's right.
So we have a comment from a listener. Today, it's not so much about the podcast, but this listener was a coaching client of Curtis, and here's what she has to say. Being a coaching client of Curtis was a game changer for me. I stopped feeling like I was going through the motions and really figured out how to realign my actions with what I wanted. Curtis helped me to build my self-esteem and gave me the tools that I needed. What are the results? I'm more confident. I know how to keep my inner critic at bay, and I've really become a master at making conscious choices, which in part has helped me lose more than 80 pounds.
It's such a privilege to be there for you and be there with you and to be kind of a guide as you work your way through a transformation. Mm-hmm. And speaking of guides, we are drawing heavily from Harriet Lerner this week, her book, Why You Won't Apologize.
Why won't you apologize?
Oh, sorry, hon.
I know. Get it right.
Let's talk about apologies. So imagine this. I'm at the breakfast table minding my own business, and my wife, who was out overnight, rolls into the kitchen, and she has this to say.
So, honey, do you remember yesterday, right before I left, and I said, I just need you to do this one thing for me, only one thing. I needed you to let this pot of chili on the stove cool and put it away. And do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember.
So now I'm looking at the stove and I see this enormous pot of chili, which I expect has been sitting out overnight. And I'm pretty unhappy right now. I don't have time to make more meals. I'm just going to have to throw this away. I just needed you to do that one thing. And I feel like I'm feeling really unsupported right now.
Okay. Well, look, about that pot of chili, don't worry about it. It can be left out overnight. I mean, back in the Wild West, they'd make chili. They'd leave it out overnight. Trust me, I've got a PhD in the life sciences. People overreact to this stuff. Just don't sweat the chili. You can forget about the chili. I'll just put it away.
So Curtis, that apology is really not working for me right now. Can you try again?
Ooh, okay, listeners. I hear that. So let's try for a take two. So instead of that, I'll say this. Oh, honey, I'm really sorry. I totally apologize. But, you know, I just forgot. The thing is, I had the house locked up and I was going to come down and put away the chili, but I was putting the kids to bed and they were so naughty and, you know, they want mom and there's just dad. And so I was just totally in the kid zone and just completely slipped my mind.
You know, I could feel your pain, honey, but I'm not feeling like that was an apology. Give it another shot.
Okay, guys, this is take 3. Feels like take infinity already, but we'll try again. Okay. Oh, honey, look, I just forgot. I didn't mean to not be supportive of you. Okay. So I just forgot. And I think making it about you not being supported it's a little, much.
I won't even tell you what's wrong with that. I just like something else to come out of your mouth.
All right, listeners, I got the memo on that one. Let's try again. Okay, I know this one. This is going to work, you guys. Listen to this. Oh, honey. Oh, no, I can't believe I forgot that. I'm so stupid. I just can be so absent-minded. And, you do all this stuff for the house, and I never think of you. I'm so inconsiderate. I'm just sitting around, wasting my time. You're doing all the work. I don't deserve you, honey. And I'm going to go down to Cub right now. I'm going to get some, good tuna casserole for the kids. And I'm going to serve it to you. I'm going to put out the dishes. It's going to be wonderful, honey. Just don't worry about a thing.
Wow, that's some really good groveling, hon. That's really good groveling. And at some level, yes, it feels affirmative, but it's really not what I'm looking for, an apology.
Okay, fine. Hey, I'm sorry if you're upset. I didn't realize this was such a sensitive issue for you.
That is the worst of all. I'm not even going to reject it officially.
Okay, fine. So tell us what's going to be a good apology.
Okay.
Why should we do all this?
Yes.
And if groveling's not good enough for you, what is?
Well, it's the subject of our podcast today. What makes a good apology? And I think our listeners can probably get, as we go through this, what's wrong with all of your previous attempts at an apology. And we just want to, first of all, emphasize that learning how to make a really good, authentic apology is going to do a lot for you. And I don't feel like people teach us how to make mature apologies. And they're so helpful. Once you get them down, they restore relationships, and they may not do all the heavy lifting depending on the issue, but at the very least, they open up a relationship where something's stuck for healing and growth.
Yeah, they can really open things up. I'm thinking of a river, and it's got a bazillion logs, and there's this big log jam. And you got to break up the log jam to get the relationship moving again. And often an apology can be the thing that clears up the blockage so that things can get flowing again.
Sure. It really clears the air and lets everyone kind of move forward. I mean, here's the thing. Every good relationship has conflict. It's just part of the nature of relationship. And, all people mess up. So being really good at apologies is going to help this conflict that you're just generally going to have to be productive and growth oriented, so that it actually has the effect of deepening your relationship versus stagnating it.
Another thing is we can have these patterns.
Yeah.
And if I'm making the effort to give you an apology, then it can start to break up the pattern or highlight it.
Yes. Yeah. But here's the thing, I think, and I don't know if you've noticed this too, Curtis, but a good apology can do that. A bad apology can just make things worse.
Yes.
And pull us into the patterns and create more of the logjam than we already even had.
Yeah, there's some risk involved. So what do you think is involved in a good apology?
Well, I'll tell you what I think, and I'll just quickly run through these, and then I want to talk about them more in our conversation.
Okay.
So there's 4 things. And the first one is, if I'm making a good apology, I'm accepting responsibility for something specific that I did that was to some extent harmful or hurtful to another person. Responsibility for something I did. The second thing is, I express real remorse or sorrow for the harm that I caused. The third is, if restitution is possible, I make restitution. And the fourth is, I make a resolution not to do that same thing again. And likely, I communicate that to the other person. So there's some change involved in my behavior. Those are the 4 things.
Great. The 4 things. So accepting responsibility. I think in terms of personal responsibility. I have to accept responsibility for what I did. And here's one of the things about this. I have to keep the focus on what I did and not the other person's response. Like, I'm sorry you feel blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm sorry I made you feel blah, blah, blah. Well, your apology is headed for a train wreck right there.
Right. Or, if you've had someone say those things to you and you're just feeling kind of patronized or like it's being thrown back at you, it's because those are not apologies. An apology says, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I'm sorry I made that really insensitive comment. Not, I'm sorry you're hurt. And you're kind of sensitive, by the way.
Right. So personal responsibility, focusing on my specific behavior.
Yeah. So if I shift the focus from my behavior to your behavior or your feelings, it's like I'm trying to make you the problem so that really I don't have to take responsibility for the thing I did.
Yeah, responsibility is so uncomfortable. I'd much rather make you the problem.
Well, it does feel really uncomfortable. And I think we have these go-to ways of trying to slink out of it, right? Like, I'm sorry you mentioned there's I'm sorry if, which is a way of not really admitting the actual thing happened. So that's another kind of non-apology.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but.
Painful. So frankly, the way that your brain processes the word but is you can say what you want and then you say but, and it negates everything that came before it. And pretty much it undoes your sincerity. So whatever you do, don't say, I'm sorry, but, and give a big explanation.
The but is really bad. The ifs are bad also.
Yeah. So your best apologies are short, specific, to the point, and they don't go on and on with the story about why it happened and all of the excuses around that.
So a good apology doesn't make excuses. It focuses on the act, and it also expresses remorse, which is another element of the good apology. So you can say what I did and then express sorrow for the harm that caused you.
Sure. So you're focused on the other person only insofar as you're focusing on this is the harm that was done to you. And I think this is key because all of our own uncomfortability and guilt gets in there and our defense mechanisms just flare up. And it can be hard to just look at and name the harm that we caused and express our sorrow for that.
Yeah, and it gets a little bit tricky because, if I did something, I played my music too loud and now you have a headache, I can't apologize for your headache. But at the same time, that's the harm you suffered. So I can say, I'm really sorry I was playing my music so loud and I ignored your requests to turn it down. That was insensitive. And now you have a headache as a result. So I can just acknowledge the harm without shifting the focus away from my actions.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think what you said actually makes another point, which is we're taking responsibility for our action. We're not taking responsibility for the other person. Like, I'm sorry I made you mad. That's taking responsibility for someone else's emotional response. What I'm sorry for is the action that I did. And there could be a lot of responses that flow from that.
Yeah, and taking responsibility is hard for a lot of reasons, but there's a number of things we might do instead.
Yeah.
Like avoid.
Just avoid the whole thing.
Yeah, just don't offer anything. I can distance. I'm just going to wait till you cool off, man. It'll blow over.
Yeah, I got to go to work now. See you later. You could deal with the chili.
Yeah, I asked one of my kiting buddies, what do you do when you want to buy a really expensive kite? And he said, oh, just go ahead. They'll get over it after a few days.
Oh, you took that one to heart, didn't you, honey? Well, I got this great advice from my friend.
What are friends for?
Yeah, avoid's pretty popular. I do think there's a couple things we do that are a little more subtle and that it could be unclear to us that they're not actually apologizing. So one of them I'm thinking of is what we could call appeasing. And that's where you're confronting the disconnection, right? Or the conflict in the relationship. And you want to be reconnected and you want to move closer, but it's really hard to actually address the injury. So then your focus becomes not so much on my responsibility and the harm to the other person. It's like your focus is to get them to stop being mad at you, to say, it's okay, I forgive you.
Yeah, understanding appeasement was really very helpful to me, both in terms of giving and also recognizing when I'm not getting an apology. So if I'm just trying to make you happy, so it's going to go away and we can get back to where we were, that's probably appeasement. So the groveling was a good example of, I'm just going to throw myself on my sword until, you become uncomfortable enough to just want to put it behind us.
Yeah. So over apologizing, just focusing on your own deficiencies, placating. And I think sometimes we can, try to persuade the other person to move through it and get to a better place so we can feel better and reconnect. Sometimes in extreme situations, I think the person who's offering the apology ends up being really sort of guilt-ridden. And then the person who was the wronged spends the time like trying to make the apologizer feel better about the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a really ironic situation where I feel so guilty about it. And I keep expressing my remorse over and over and over until you, the injured party, are starting to comfort me. And you just wish you never would have brought it up in the first place.
So here's one thing that struck me, like kind of how you were struck about appeasement, Curtis, is a true apology has this kind of growth orientation. So there's some kind of real change in the relationship that, it's not just so much, let's fix this so it can go away and not be a problem, but let's enter into it, let's address it so we can get to a new place in the relationship.
You're having to own up to something, or you have to face a problem. It's going to be uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfortable. And actually that's the part of the reason for this second approach we can take that's a little more subtle, which is it's really uncomfortable and we want to give an account. So there's appeasement, right? And then there's giving an account. And I think this is maybe our most common knee-jerk reaction, where we get a little defensive when we've messed up and we want to justify or explain what happened so that I can be exonerated or told like, it's okay, you didn't really do anything wrong, it wasn't your fault.
Well, this is a great work skill, right? As something goes wrong and the fingers start to point, even though everybody sits around saying, well, we're going to focus on the solutions, not the problem. Your savvy operators know that you want to give an accounting of what happened in a way that puts you in a good light.
Sure. So the finger doesn't land pointing to you.
However, in relationships, and depending on the harm and so forth, an accounting is not an apology. Let's say that.
Yeah, because kind of behind my accounting, I'm really trying to avoid the consequences. There were all these mitigating circumstances. I really couldn't control them. And so an apology, a real apology, is going to appeal to the other person's maybe you could call it their soul or their interiority, and point to, the harm that was done. And accounting is more like, I'm going to appeal to your intellect and all the causes and circumstances, and you're asking the other person just to be reasonable about the whole thing.
Yeah, I want to explain it all. And then you say, oh, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. I'll get over it.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about appeasements and accounts is that they really do sound like apologies. And sometimes both parties can feel like, well, there's been an apology. But an authentic apology is going to really have all those 4 pieces that we mentioned.
I think it's very helpful to have a sense of when you're not getting an apology, because you feel flat.
Yeah.
And you're not ready to take the next step, but you don't know why.
Right. And then sometimes you're thinking like, well, I just need to let it go and not pursue it. But there's really, as we said before, really great benefits from entering into the apology process in an authentic way. So the third part of a good apology is, if restitution is possible, make restitution. Because if you really take the harm seriously and you really take responsibility for it, you're going to make restitution.
Right, Karen. I mean, if you have repentance, restoring the other person to the extent that's possible is part of that. And I think sometimes we downplay restitution.
Yeah, I totally agree. We think, oh, well, if I forgive you, then it's not a big deal and I can set aside what you owe me. But restitution isn't just for the person who was wronged. It's for the person who needs to make restitution, and it's for the relationship and the continued growth in the relationship. And it's also on behalf of rebuilding trust and rebuilding the capacity to risk in the relationship and trust that the other person will respond.
And think about how much it helps everybody to see you actually doing the restitution. It has an impact that goes beyond simply talking things over.
It really does. So I think if we're just sort of poo-pooing restitution, it's worth taking another look at the place that it has in this restoration of relationship.
The fourth part of the apology is resolving not to do it again and saying that clearly. So that seems pretty obvious. I think it's a little bit situation dependent. Do you have any perspectives on this?
Well, it seems like if you really regret and repent from the specific thing you did, that you would be motivated to make the change and resolve not to do it again. At the same time, we all have a lot of patterns, and we can't just really say, wow, I'll never do that again, because even if we said it, we'd be thinking, I'll probably do that again next week and I'll be in the same situation. So at that point, it's actually super great information. Wow. So if I was going to say, I won't do this again, I might have a lack of confidence in that. Well, why is that? What's the deeper pattern that's pointing to? And then I can start to unpack the deeper pattern and see, well, what would change look like here? So if I just leave this part out, then I'm never really questioning, well, will I do this again? And why? And what's the deeper pattern?
Sometimes promising not to do it again feels like groveling to me. That's probably a personal thing.
Interesting.
It points to the fact that apologizing, well, it's an art.
Yeah.
And it's complex, and it can, I mean, if you're breaking up the log jam and the relationship starts to flow again, well, maybe there's going to be some more things to address.
Right. Yeah. And it's not, the energy around this is not so much, you better not do this again. so much as this relationship is important to me. The behaviors that support this relationship are important to me. And it's worth it to me to seek change and transformation in the relationship.
Karen, I really love how you said that the apology is about the energy you're bringing to the relationship, the desire for healing, the hope for reconciliation.
Right. Right.
And that's the energy perhaps to hold on to as we go through that difficult process of owning up to whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we can get really good at working through our own uncomfortability and have resilience around apologizing. So should we share with our listeners what a good apology would look like for leaving the chili out overnight?
The dreaded chili. Okay, let's see what I can do after this great illumination here. Oh, Karen, I forgot about leaving out the chili. That was really, I don't know, it's irresponsible of me, and I wasn't thinking of you or the family or anything. And I know that I can not have what you want uppermost in my mind. I mean, I can be selfish. So I'm really sorry about that. And I'm gonna, if you really do want to throw the chili out, that's fine. That's great. I'll go get some food together, get this meal going for the next couple days.
Okay. Well, that was very interesting. Can I give you a little feedback on that?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So it was a little too focused on you, your characteristics, and, being insensitive or not thinking about it or forgetting. And the best apology is simple and direct. You asked me very carefully to put the chili away when it was cold. I apologize. I did not do that. I can tell it's a big inconvenience for you and you're frustrated. I'm very sorry for the harm that I caused you. I'd like to make some restitution. I wonder if we could talk through what that would look like. And it seems to me appropriate that we could then have a discussion around whether or not to use the chili and different perspectives and what sort of fixing the situation might look like. But you're just apologizing for what you did. I'm sorry for the harm it caused you. I'd like to make restitution. And even if you said, I'd like to say I'll never do that again. And I'm not sure I can truthfully say that, but I can say I'm going to implement some things so that I can try to remember the things that are really important to you.
Yeah, so it is interesting that in the heat of the moment, getting the apology done well is challenging.
For sure.
And also it can start to open up a conversation, even in this little incident, there would at least be a conversation about the restitution part.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to do restitution that would appeal to you and not aggravate you.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I really like that our guide, Harriet Lerner, says is the apology is kind of the start of the conversation. So you don't rush through the apology so you can move on. You can come back around and have other conversations. But it opens up that conversation that then you may have more things to say about it.
Karen, can I wrap this up by quoting Harriet Lerner, quoting Jack Cador? We apologize when we accept responsibility for an offense or grievance and express remorse in a direct, personal, and unambiguous manner, offering restitution and promising not to do it again.
Perfect.
So it's about personal responsibility, remorse, restitution, and their harm.
I do want to say we recognize there's a lot of complexity and layers to situations and apologies. So we're going to come back around next week and talk about some of the things around making good apologies. Like, well, how does this even fit in with forgiveness? How does forgiveness work here with apologies? And what about situations where there's kind of a lot of responsibility to go around and it's hard to sift through all of that? And where do you start even with all that? And why is it hard to apologize? There's a lot of good reasons why. And if we start to recognize them coming up for ourselves, we can use them to move forward.
Karen, that's right. There's so much more. The apology can be such a power for good, and it's worth trying to figure it out so we can get it done.
It's worth doing. Exactly.
And something you, my friends, can figure out and get done is tell a friend about the Catholic Midlife podcast. Tell one friend. Emails, texts, bricks through the window with a note. It's all fair game. Bring it on.
Awesome.
Okay, it is great to be here with you, my friends. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Catholic Midlife podcast. It's great to be here with you. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite app or platform. Leave a review. That's so helpful so that others like you can find the podcast. And be sure to tell your friends. We'll see you next week.